It's so far away. It's so far away. Cold wind blows into the skin. Can't believe the state you're in. It's so far away. It's so far away. Who are you trying to impress? Steadily creating a mess. Step in front of a runaway train. chest above aside, aching chest above aside, aching chest above aside. To know the best, powering through the forks without regrets. Different now, every step is like a mile. All the lights seem to flash and pass you by. So, how's it gonna be when it all comes down to cycling trivialities? You don't know which way to turn. Every trifle becoming bad. All this time you were chasing dreams without knowing what you wanted them to be. So how's it gonna be when it all comes down to cycling trivialities? So how's it gonna be when it all comes down to cycling trivialities? Who cares if 100 years from now all your small steps, all your shitty clouds? Who cares if 100 years from now we'll remember all the players, we'll remember all the clowns. So how's it gonna be when it all comes down to cycling trivialities? So where's this leaving me when it all comes down to cycling trivialities? Cycling trivialities. 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 Idle as it seemed, trudging through the mist, following the creeks, erasing dim lines on the list, eager to arrive, leaving footprints in the clay, reading rocks and vines, telling indigo from gray, telling indigo from gray, scattered rays of light, and the springs in the air, all berries in the tree.
Work with technology related to nature. So that's all part of trying to link the advancement of digital solutions uh, in computation. Have to be connected. But this fabrication, digital, is going to transform how we produce in our everyday life. So we're working on how to work in a different context today. This context of today, you have yeah. The context of today and you is being influenced by these increasing levels of atmosphere, increasing also that's gonna have everywhere. Why this happens? We are depleting natural resources, absorb the CO2. We're having a very wasteful way of living. You wasting That's a reality. Our climate denial, let me, uh, maybe I'm in the wrong room. Uh, um, and we base our productive system also on quality, satisfied. Um, we're addicted to oil country. Just sell oil and more products. Power everything. People, microphone. Um, in order to keep this idea of centralized power, but the way of like the resort, the very polite, but this is centralized resort, centralized power, less power. Uh, Also, like the way we live is uh, less that we cover that Mars. Uh, Seems like we have one like the way related to right. Live in a place to earth loads, like one, a car to move items are made in a supply chain. Again, the question is like in several areas, have farmers in several areas are having payroll, devices. The question is how we change here. Uh, Mars seems, and the other question is kind of like innovate makers capable. The other thing we're seeing today is that it's similar to the moments that we had century, right? The world at that point that actually but time was not like west. Then uh, then culture. That technology. Okay, sorry. So we have, the first industrial revolution, right? With the telegraph, with the steam machine. Have another kind or like have now start mining synthetic biology, blockchain, right? How we were to avoid what happened. Like it started like as a very open hierarchical, where smart people capture. So this video Then the interesting point is access, right? What happens when are only university have the risk depending on access in place reality, how to play critical technology. For example, how many of all these things um, that that's what we're using it, and also how we are growing or making accessible this technology for not only experts but for everyone, right? So what had happening, like Fab Labs that started at the Center for Bits and Atoms at MIT, uh, started to appear in the world more or less in the year between the year 2002 and 2003. The first Fab Lab was set up in the south of Boston, in an area that was like a socially depressed. It was an African American community. There is like a segregation, still segregation in the United States. This community was not an exception. And then a social leader called Mel King got in touch with Professor Neil Gershenfeld, and they got a grant from the National Science Foundation in the United States and created the first Fab Lab with the idea of bringing these technologies to these impoverished communities to empower people to be able to look after their own destiny somehow. So what you see here is how these Fab Labs started to spread around the world and started to grow, and similarly to the Moore's Law. You know what's the Moore's Law? Yeah? So they started to double every 18, between 18 and 24 months. Fab Labs started to duplicate in the world.
Less law.
What's that?
Now the new law is called less.
Correct. Yeah. So this that's you're updated. So similarly to the amount of transistors that are in a microcontroller that get duplicated every 18 and 24 months, the amount of Fab Labs in the world have been following that law. That's been an accident. It was not planned to be like that. This is based on a book actually by the Neil Gershenfeld and his brothers called Designing Reality that I recommend to check. So what has been happening is this. This was not planned. Every Fab Lab that appears in the world is not created by MIT. It's not created by one central organization. They just appear. And they join the network because they share the values, because they want to connect a network of knowledge. And what I was saying before, this is not about the technology. Technology is not really new. It's about on how we use this technology and how we make accessible these technologies to people. Why? Because this will be fundamentally the future of production, right? Understanding that right now, in every Fab Lab of the world, you can design anything and then upload the file and download it in every other Fab Lab is fundamental to understand how this could be translated into cities, right? Imagine, I am in, can be in Buenos Aires, design a chair, and I can send it to Indonesia, and I don't have to put it in a shipping container and use fossil fuels for the ship to come here, download it, put it in a car, take it to your house, etc. Actually, the file goes around the world. In the file, once it's received, goes to the Fab Lab, is made locally, and then you get the chair. Right? Does it make sense? So what we have here is that you share the recipe, right, of how things are made. You don't share the dish. Imagine if Italy is around here, right? Imagine if Italy ships all the pizza from Italy, right? We don't share the pizzas. We share the recipes to make the pizzas, and then you have locally infrastructure to make the pizza. Yeah. Imagine when you ask for Pizza Hut, the pizza doesn't come from here. Imagine that. So you have the Pizza Hut is a mini factory of of pizzas, and then what is shared is the recipe of how to make the pizza. That's what's that? Well, actually, it's something else. So I'm talking about all these kind of levels in which we see that one builds on top of the other. No, understanding the context, that understanding also that we are in a moment of convergence. That this moment of convergence needs, intrinsically to provide access to technology because these technologies otherwise are going to be over us. And then what comes after is the idea of how we set up learning environments or education experiences around these places, right? And then I think that seem differently from what industrial education was used to be. It means like you go to a university, you go to school, you go to university, you study, you accumulate. It's a kind of a hard drive education. You have to go to a test and prove how much information you can store in a hard drive, right? I hated tests always because I felt that they were super useless. You have to memorize stuff, so storage of information. But when you have information everywhere, what you need to do is to be able to relate information. So it's more like a RAM thinking. So we're moving from a hard drive thinking to a RAM memory thinking, right? And then the other thing is that the best way to learn is while making something, like embedded knowledge. That's what we are creating in the Fab Labs, that you learn by doing things. You don't learn by studying. You don't memorize. You practice. You make. You test. You break. And that's a way that you have knowledge that is in you, and that no one else can take it from you. And we do this from kids to higher education. I will show you some examples. So this is the class that Professor Neil Gershenfeld used to teach at MIT. It's called How to Make Almost Anything. So this is a class that in 6 months you learn how to code in a computer control machine, to make electronics, to program those electronics, to 3D print, 3D scan, and so on and so on and so on. And you integrate all of that into a final project. So this project, for instance, is a web browser for a parrot. This is a sound machine, like a DIY sound box. This is a dress that creates spikes when someone gets close. So you can wear it in the metro. This is for women. You can wear it in the metro, and then you will get an attacker away from you. So people started to use this knowledge to make creative things that they don't exist as products, right? To start to invent new things. And as you can imagine this, you can imagine other type of projects that they can change the way we, for instance, deal with waste in our houses, how we produce energy, how we save water, and so on and so on. So the problem is that to go to that class, to the How to Make Almost Anything, you need to go to MIT. This is the MIT campus, right? And it's only like maybe 20 people, but now it's 100 people more or less that can sit every year in the How to Make Almost Anything class. What we have done is that turn that MIT campus into the planet, right? So if you want to go to the class of How to Make Almost Anything today, you can access to the class in a Fab Lab and learn in the Fab Lab. That's part of the educational layer that we're building as a Fab Lab network. This class happens in two ways. One is, this is Neil. So he teaches the class as he would be in Boston. But then at the same time, you have people connected from Italy, from Latin America, from Europe, from Israel, from everywhere. So they're attending to the class once a week. So that's on Wednesdays. That's 3 p.m. in Barcelona. It means that people is having lunch. That will be like at 9 p.m. in Indonesia, so people would finish dinner, right? You will go to a class. And it means like people in California will be 6 a.m. and they will be attending to the class with a coffee, right? So that moment is at the same time, but then everyone goes and work in their Fab Lab to learn with their peers and to learn with the local mentors by making things, right? So this is the Fab Academy that has been fundamental to understand how technology, knowledge, learning environments in which people create projects that are adding value to the world. Because it's okay. It's okay. Oh, it's okay. It came back. came back. I will use it for the next one. This one is okay. So what we do is not only teaching people how to make almost anything, but also making them to understand that it's not almost anything, but that actually it's anything that contributes to transforming the way we produce energy, food, how we relate to each other, how people learn in the classroom, and so on. And again, this sounds abstract, but let me tell you about some projects. This is one of my students, Nicolas Bollier. He's from Chile. He started to develop a project in which he was training fungi. You know mycelium? You know what is mycelium? It's a type of fungi that grows very fast and is able to create structures. And the mycelium can eat pollutants, right? In this case, Nicolas trained the mycelium, because you can train the fungi, to eat cigarette butts. He realized that people in Barcelona smoke a lot and they throw the cigarettes outside the metro station. I know that in Indonesia people smoke a lot as well. So this will be like a great project for Indonesia. Why? Because what it does, when you throw the cigarette, you have a lot of tar and a lot of pollutants that most of the times end up in the sea, right? And actually, there is a great photo. I should put it. It's a great photo of a bird, a mother bird, feeding the little one with a cigarette butt, right? So we're seeing this gets into the natural systems. So what Nicolas did is to train the fungi, a mushroom, a living organism, to eat the cigarette butt and to decompose it and make it harmless to anyone, right? But also, what he was experimenting as well, I know that this sounds scary, but he was training the fungi with his own DNA, and then he was learning to eat him. So he made a concept that this is a way to die, meaning that you can have a fungi as a pet while you're alive, and then this fungi, once you die, can eat your body, your dead body, not to make it a pollutant to the world, right? Don't try this at home, please. So this is another project developed by Gabor. He's German, Polish. So he realized that people spend a lot of time in their phones, right? And you go to a dinner and you are like this, and people don't talk to each other. So basically, what he did is he developed a project in which he would set up a service in restaurants in which people leave their phones in their counter, and then these phones will be connected to a network of servers. And what he would do is to do crowdsourcing the computer power of their phones to run massive experiments like sequencing DNA or funding extraterrestrial life, like the SETI project, right? And then while doing that, you can mine some coins. I don't know if you're familiar with cryptocurrencies. I know Indonesia has been going crazy about crypto. Is any in the room owning cryptocurrencies? No one says. So he will make people earn cryptocurrencies that they can then trade for other things, right? So you use your computer power in your phone to add to a massive computer cloud that can run massive computer power to do things that they cannot do one single computer. And they call it like a phone farming, right? Another project is that Alexandra and Oliver did is actually develop educational kits to teach people in the school about biodesign and artificial intelligence. So he did actually experiments with kids in Barcelona on them learning how to start to have a new tool in their life. It will be an AI assistant, for instance, or train an algorithm that he would do was a transportation system to find out where was the best way for the parents to make the route when they picking up their kids, right? So this kind of learning exercises would be unthinkable a few years ago, but also if we don't start to introduce this in schools, our kids will be learning skills for the 19th century, right? Then finally, Emily was working on developing a whole set of recipes in which she replaced animal proteins by insects, right? And she started to do experiments with chefs in Barcelona on how they can incorporate insect-based diets that contain a lot of protein instead of using the animal-based one. So this is the kind of emerging futures that we imagine when people learn these skills. They understand that they have to do something, they have to change something very important in the world, like the attention economy, or the animal protein-based diet, etc., etc. They design something into today, and they speculate. No, this is a speculative exercise. Imagine that we all eat insects in the future, right? So this is part of a master that I direct in Barcelona, but also in all these masters that we run inside our institute, we embed the ethos of the Fab Lab, right? So now the digital fabrication knowledge is as important as learning how to write, how to use a computer, how to read. Is fundamental knowledge, and that's what we're saying. Like, 20 years ago, you will go to a class in the school to learn how to use a computer. Right now, it's become like almost like embedded knowledge. 20 years ago, you will go to a place to use a computer, right? You will use like a cyber cafe. Oh, and there was maybe one person in the room that knew how to use a computer. Now we have more than one. We have 3 or 4 computers, each one of us. Computers are, in a way, embedded in our life. They're ubiquitous. They're everywhere. Okay, thank you. And you don't need to go to a place to use a computer anymore, right? So we think that fabrication is going to be the same. Digital fabrication is going to be fundamental knowledge, and the way we make things is not that you go to a place, to a fab lab to learn the things, but actually it's embedded in your everyday life, right? And what I'm saying is, like, you probably go to a Nike store and you get your feet scan, and then your shoe is going to be 3D printed while you're having a coffee next door, right? It will be printed on demand using biomaterials or materials that are going to biodegrade, and they're going to be in a continuous circulation of materials at the local level. So we're embedding these same logics in different masters related with buildings, with architecture, with cities, and so on. So this is fundamental knowledge, and again, for us. Then you saw some examples of how people start to, when you have the skills, then you start to disrupt, to innovate, to create, new projects that people would not imagine. I will show you, I'll list you some ones. This is a solar house that we did in 2010. That was a Fab Lab house. So it's a house that you can make in a Fab Lab. The design changes depending on where it's placed in the world, because it needs to maximize the surface to take advantage of the sun in order to create energy. So this house was able to create twice the energy that it needed. So it means that it could put energy in the grid, right? We wanted to put a small Fab Lab down the house because we wanted the house to have babies, but they didn't let us. This was in a competition called Solar Decathlon. I don't know if you know about this competition. It's a competition about solar houses. We lost the competition completely. We were the last ones because our house started to receive a lot of visits, and every time that you have more than 6 people in certain ranges of the day, they will take out your points. So we're going down, 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 down. And at some point, what we started to do is to make parties in the house. So we started to capture energy during the day, and then in the night we were launching parties, putting music, and then we were calling the parties one watt, one friend, right? And then what happened is that we won the People's Choice Award of the competition. This is a continuation of this was the year after. This is for one of the major electric energy companies in Spain. It's called Endesa, actually now acquired by Enel, an Italian company. And this was the demonstrator of the smart city project for Enel or Endesa at that time, that was run completely off the grid, and it was storing energy in the batteries and also in the electric car that they were promoting. This is a smart citizen sensor. This is a project that I started back in 2011. It's a low-cost sensor to measure pollution in the city. So this would allow people to put the sensor in their house and start to track the air quality, the noise level, and so on. So I want to know, what do you think, what would happen if you put one of these sensors in your balcony here in Jakarta? Which will be the values that we will raise. But I will show you a short video that the BBC did for us. So they put me a sign that internet was ready. See.
In the heart of bustling Barcelona, Plaza del Sol has become a popular place for friends to meet, relax and enjoy a drink or two. But I spare thought for the residents who live here. For many families like this one, the noise became unbearable.
They go to buy drinks and beer, they go party, they sing a song a lot. And for me, at mornings I'm very tired because I can't sleep good.
I open the window and say, "Shut up, please," and she says, "Sorry, sorry, sorry."
The residents here have had some surprising help from this sensor technology made right here in Barcelona. The Urban Sensor Board is a low-cost collection of sensors that can measure air pollution, temperature and, of course, noise. It was developed at Barcelona's Fabrication laboratory, a workshop that lets people test out new ideas and designs.
We tried to use what was in the market and we were not satisfied. And since we have access to these tools in every Fab Lab or makerspace in the world, we basically decided, okay, let's make it by ourselves.
By putting sensors by windows and on balconies, the families were able to prove that the noise levels at night were reaching 100 decibels, far higher than the World Health Organization's recommendations. Armed with their data, the residents went to the council, who agreed to make some changes. Now the police move people on at 11 p.m. and new plant pots stop people sitting on the steps to drink.
Now I sleep more hours because there are the plants.
It's more better because the people not sit down here in the place. Now we sleep a lot of the night and it's more good.
The Urban Sensor Board is just one project made at the Fab Lab. It's one of more than 1,000 labs across the world that share their experimental designs, like this fish tank that recycles nutrients to help plants grow. The lab hopes sharing the blueprints of designs will help cities make more products locally and become more self-sufficient and eco-friendly.
By enabling the sharing of data worldwide on design, we could create more sustainable and more productive cities. It's not totally crazy to think about, and that's the goal of the Fab City initiative.
I can show you live some data from the sensors. I can go to the platform. I think there's only few online, but for you to have an idea, right now it's kind of calling the database. So in total, there have been like 2,000 sensors put online at least once. And then if I ask to show me which ones are just sending data now, I can, for instance, show you, let's say this is the closest one in Australia. And these are the values that this sensor is capturing. I can compare, for instance, the noise with the light and starts to make some analysis of the data that these sensors are capturing. But the cool thing about this is that these sensors are not by the government or by an institution. It's a citizen that is capturing data about the pollution in their area in real time and is sharing it with the world. And you can use an API and develop applications on top of that, of course, right? So that's one of the projects. It's alive. Actually, is a product that emerged from the Fab Lab, and it can be actually acquired. I don't know if you know Seed Studio. Seed Studio is one of the largest manufacturers of electronics in China. We partnered with them, and it's actually been available there. No? So this is the kind of projects that we imagine. This is one project. We imagine that more projects come out of a Fab Lab in this way. This is something that maybe it's not profitable for a company to do it because it's not about money. It's about the impact. And it's probably something that a government will not be interested to do. Because one of the things it puts in evidence, for instance, the lack of policy in air quality, lack of policy on noise, on levels of noise, for instance. We did it. This is it's part of the same project. All these experiments about the noise in Barcelona, we did it inside a European project called Making Sense. I'm going to skip some projects here. This is 3D printing with robots to make things that actually are bigger than the printer. So if you have a 3D printer, you can only print what fits inside the 3D printer. With these robots working collaboratively, you can print things that are bigger than the machines itself, right? This is another 3D printing project that we did in Construmat, a big construction fair. In this case, the 3D print between plants. So they're fundamental to our ecosystems, and then they are disappearing. And what we're doing is, together with an app, sensors, and the Hive, we are enabling a global citizen science experiment in which people is putting these sensors and capturing this data and is sharing it online. I'm going to keep going. Some of the examples I've showed you, like for instance, the smart citizen or the open source beehives and so on, they show like somewhere like in a transition between the traditional way of organizing design products, the industry, the services, in which everything is very siloed, and every step is very separated from other and so on. And what I'm saying is like we are transitioning to something that is more complex, which is the relationship between citizens, the production at the local level, the micro factories, the Industry 4.0, and also again, like what we need at the global supply chain. I think that they will still need to have things happening at the global level. But what we're doing here is like setting up the basis to do this transition, in which waste, for instance, can be reintroduced in the production streams in the city, in which the designer, the producer, and the consumer maybe is the same person or not, and in which transportation is reduced dramatically, right? So this brings the notion of distributed design. And again, I know that I'm throwing you a lot of things, but this is another project that I think is relevant for what we're doing, because within this project that is supported by the European Union, we are developing the software infrastructure, the platforms that will allow people to share designs globally, right? I can show you an example. Maybe live is better because otherwise it's a bit boring. So we have let me show you step by step. We have this platform where we register the Fab Labs in the world. And we have developed this platform from Barcelona. So you go to fablabs.io, and then probably if you want to find your closest Fab Lab, what you do is you go to the platform. Internet is a bit slow. Let me see. It's loading. So what's trying? It was fast just a second ago. Go. I can see this. Yeah. So you go to the platform, and then, for instance, you go to labs, and then in the labs we can go to a map, and then what happens is that this network of laboratories actually they have this common platform in which you can actually search for Fab Labs in Indonesia, no? Or Fab Labs if you're traveling to Philippines, you say, okay, I want to see Fab Labs in Philippines, on the United States, or whatever, because I want to visit it. So this listing of Fab Labs is important because, again, it allows all the Fab Labs to be connected and identified. But then we saw that from Fab Labs, there were more and more projects that were being created. And what we did is we partnered with a company called Wikifactory, which, as you can see, it takes the idea of the wiki, no, the common creation of knowledge, and takes it to the production. They're trying to do the internet of production, is what they call it. And partnering with them, we did this platform in which the Fab Labs, the projects that are developing in the Fab Labs, like this aquaponics system, is available for everyone to download it and to contribute to it. So you have 12 people contributing to this, or 12 people that have contributed to this project. This project has all the instructions and the files that you need to make it, right? Because it's different from the kind of the industry that want to protect IP. In this case, people want to be copied. It's kind of strange, right? But then I think like there's a great feature in which you can go to your browser, and then similar like, you know, GitHub, right? Do you use GitHub, any of you? Yeah. So GitHub is used to do contribution at scale with software development, right? So what people is trying to do is actually, this is broken, seems to be broken, but it's to take that same principle of GitHub to the design of things, of objects. Let me see if it's this file. If not, I will keep going. And then I will try to, yeah, okay. I will try to keep going. I'll try to show you with this is that actually a file, you know, any part of this machine can be taken directly into the platform. You don't leave the platform, and you can make comments or report issues in the design itself, as you do in GitHub. No? You do with a piece of code, you can report an issue. So imagine that this internet of production is possible today. So it means like people can download, as I said before with the example of the pizza and the chair, you can download a system to grow your own food, right? And make it in any lab in the world. As I said before, it's important the connection with the labs, but also with the local manufacturers. This is another project that we are, another platform that we are developing, which is called MakeWorks. With this platform, what we're trying to do is to connect the Fab Labs with the local manufacturing ecosystems. So Fab Labs are not factories. You have to know that. Fab Labs are places to learn, to prototype, If you ask me, they're more like cultural spaces. But microfactories can be these ones, right? And a lot of the times what happens is there are a lot of manufacturers in one city, at least in Europe, that they have their factories without being used because they don't have demand. So what we're doing with this platform is to go and see these manufacturers, map them, and then you can know, like, this metal, these people can make fabrication in Scotland, in this case, and you have their contact and you have where they are located, and then you can go from your Fab Lab to do a small batch production with them. You won't do millions of things. You will do probably hundreds of a couple thousands of things with them. So that's MakeWorks. So that's part of the different stacks, no? So you know about the full stack. I guess that maybe some of you know about software. In this full stack approach, we take it to fabrication as well. So you have the Fab Labs, the learning, the innovation, the manufacturing ecosystems, and so on. So this is part of the MakeWorks part. So then you can imagine that when you have the Fab Labs, but also the manufacturing ecosystem around cities, then you start to transform the way cities function. Right? As I was saying before, right now cities import a lot of products and they produce trash. Right? This is a model I will explain to you in a bit. But what we're trying to say is that, look, if we relocalize production in cities, urbanization can be productive. It means that we are actually able to develop a sustainable way for live in cities or to have an urban life. And it means to develop the technologies needed and the infrastructure needed to produce locally food, to produce locally things, and to produce locally energy, mainly. That's what we need to run cities. I told you before that I was going to go back to explain to you about Venezuela. This is what Venezuela exports, mostly oil. And this is what imports, mostly everything, right? Oil now is going cheaper, and it's probably gonna be cheaper and cheaper because it's gonna be less valuable, unless there is some people create some kind of war to make it more expensive, which is actually what happens. But what is important in Venezuela is that the production of oil, the capacity, is being reduced dramatically because of an incompetent government. So from 3.5 million of barrels per day, they're only producing like 500,000, right? That means less money. That means you can buy less things from the world to satisfy the needs of people, right? And this is the consequence also of not developing a local industry, right? If a local industry, they strangulated all the local industry. So basically in Venezuela, we import like toilet paper, chicken, eggs, everything that you can imagine that is basic is imported in Venezuela, right? And it's only depending with having money to buy in international markets. Take it into a city. The city doesn't produce anything locally. Everything is kind of imported. It's produced in a regional level, but also a lot of things depends on global markets. In the case of whatever tragedy, we can have a serious issues in cities because they are not able to satisfy the needs of their own citizens. And this is the things that we're trying to promote with the fundamental role of the Fab Labs for the years to come. Because these are kind of the urban landscapes that we're creating, right? This is the industry that looks, this is an Amazon, the logistics centers. This is probably one of the IKEA's, supply chains sources. So this is Fab City, right? Like creating a new urban paradigm for cities, which it attached to this idea. Again, I think if you're coming from ICT, you know this diagram. This is the topological diagram of networks, right? So if you, let's take the revolution in the digital revolution in information. By the early 20th century, this was the way of broadcasting information, right? Like accessing information. One broadcaster and many people connected to that broadcaster, right? This could be like a national TV, like the very early radio, for instance. So one broadcaster, many people getting the information. And decentralized, you start to see maybe it's like a half of the 20th century, late 20th century, where many TV broadcasters are part of this decentralized network. It's cable. It's the cable TV, let's say. But then what we're seeing with the internet and YouTube is that this distributed, in which the broadcaster and the consumer of the information is, you cannot say who is broadcasting and who is consuming. They're all part nodes of a decentralized network. Take it to production, right? This is like you can take it to the internet also, but take it to production, like to industry, right? So the funny thing is that even we were here, actually. This is the medieval times. Cities were able to produce most what they needed, right? In the 15th century, more or less, cities were producing everything. We were to decentralize, which was like creating these networks, regional networks of interdependence between industries. And now we're making everything, not only in China, but where things are cheap, right? So we're going backwards. What we're saying is, no, we need to go, the other way around. We need to support the capacity for cities to have local infrastructure for local production. And that's the Fab City concept connected to the very basic ICT concept, like the topological design of networks. So this is already a distributed network, as I said before, right? These are nodes of a distributed non-hierarchical network that produce things and they consume things as well, of course. The paradigm basically is this one, is what I was saying about the pizza. The current way of organizing the distribution of resources is based on the extraction of raw materials, turning into a products, moving them to places where they are consumed, and then the the waste goes back to actually Indonesia. I think returned like a couple of weeks ago, lots of amount of plastic that some European countries were sending here. And China in some point say, no, we don't want to take the plastic from Europe a couple of years ago. So what we're seeing is that these streams are starting to be cutted, right? So what we're saying is that the materials and the atoms should stay in the cities. And what travels is the information, right? But at the city scale. What happens in the Fab Lab, but at the city scale. How this works at the city scale? We started to think about complementary networks of small flexible factories. Actually, in Barcelona, there is one project of a flexible factory being developed in one of the former industrial areas. These are libraries that are embedding makerspaces. These are private makerspaces or Fab Labs, the purple ones. These are public Fab Labs developed by the government, like the Fabrication Ateneums. So we start to see this as an ecosystem, right? And basically, what we're trying to do now is to bring down the idea of the lab, not to the Fab Lab itself and not to the city because it's too big, but actually to the idea of experimentation areas. And this is what we call the Fab City prototypes, that you can have testing areas. Usually in smart cities, this is done a lot. Like you select a neighborhood and you start to deploy technologies like self-driving cars and new internet networks and so on. So I think this is where things become connected, right? The idea of personal fabrication, you can have a 3D printer in your house. You can have a Fab Lab that is a social space in your neighborhood, but you can have a flexible factory in your city. You can have a larger industry in your region, and then you probably will have still to have access to supply chains. What happens here is that we can calibrate each product or each thing that the city consumes at the different scales, right? What it doesn't make sense, for instance, in Barcelona, we import things like a plastic cups that fly thousands of kilometers to be able to get into our stores. So I'm going to skip this because it's a very abstract concept of how you stimulate and create trust between the stakeholders of this new way of relating production and consumption using blockchain. I leave it for the discussion, and if anyone wants to raise it afterwards. And to finalize, I want to say that this is part of the Fab City, which is not only a concept, but it's also a project that we launched as a global call for cities to produce everything they consume by 2054. This is the former mayor of Barcelona that in 2014, in the closing event of the Fab Lab network, he pressed a button to start a countdown of 40 years, right? He said Barcelona by 2054 should be able to produce almost everything it consumes. And what happens is that that clock is actually right now tickling. So this is going on. This is 34 years, 333 days since the mayor of Barcelona pressed that button and launch a challenge for global cities. What we didn't anticipate is that more cities will join. And after Barcelona, I'm going to skip this, what we had is all this network of cities. We have right now 34 cities that have joined the Fab City Global Initiative, including cities like Hamburg, cities like Belo Horizonte in Brazil, Sao Paulo, Detroit, which is a symbol of the of a you know of the decadence of the second industrial revolution and so on. I'm gonna skip some of these, but I think that this is quite important graph. It's like I talked to you a lot about Fab Labs and how important they are to enabling people to learn how to make almost anything. And also I told you about like how cities need to produce almost everything they consume. What we're trying to do with the Fab City Global Initiative, and we just created the Fab City Foundation, is to create all the full stack that it needs to happen in between, right? Which is educational programs, innovation platforms, shared strategies, platforms, digital platforms to share knowledge, and so on. We do this also creating awareness. Since 2016, we have been doing huge events. This is the Fab City Summit we organized in Amsterdam, where we developed the Fab City campus in a Java island. It's called the Island of Java in Amsterdam. You know. So in the Java island, where we had in Amsterdam, we had a prototype for 4 months of a Fab City, right? So it was houses that they were able to live off the grid. We have 3D printing bags using metals, recycling plastics, urban farming initiatives, and so on. We did the year after Fab City Summit in Copenhagen, then in Paris, where we were to the city council. This is the mayor of Paris, Anne Hidalgo, in the Fab City Summit, together with the High Commissioner, Carlos Moedas, for Science and Innovation, where they signed the Fab City Manifesto. This is recently the Asian Fab Lab Network meeting in Seoul. I was there in May, where all the Asian Fab Labs gathered. I was missing Indonesia. We didn't have anyone from Indonesia at that time. This is a recent Fab City Summit that we did in Amsterdam again. We're going to do it next year in Montreal, in Canada. And this is where we welcome these new cities, no? That, Sao Paulo, Plymouth in the UK, Recife in Brazil, Hamburg, and so on. So just finishing, I just flew this week from Egypt, where we were running the Fab Lab conference as well, the Fab 15 conference. There is a crazy idea to organize a Fab conference in Indonesia, but that's a secret. I cannot tell anyone. Where you gather more than 1,000 people coming from all over the world to be part of a network. So finally, I'm gonna show you a video. You can check more in that. This is the book. This book is online. It's a Fab City book. I edited with contributions with many people. It's free online. You can digitally access to it. And if you want to have it, you can order it on demand. It's print on demand, of course. We don't have stock. And then to end, I'm going to share with you this short video. And we can have the discussion. And I'm sorry.
When you click that button, you're committing to the next 40 years of Barcelona becoming the world's first self-sufficient city. Are you ready to push the button? Yes. Ready, set, go.
Information becomes accessible to people who are changing the whole framework in which we have been building our society in the last maybe 200 years. When you are starting a business, abuse yourself, your whole world of society is kind of reshaped.
Technology and data should serve the people. We should give them back economic and democratic control. The atoms that are heavy should stay and move locally, because it takes energy and resources to move them around. The bits can go globally. So that is a leap in industrial design that works within the surface of the
Fab Cities is not just about a transition of a piece of infrastructure. It's fundamentally a transition to a different economic, societal revolution.
Island dulu. Yeah, thank you, Thomas. So welcome to Jakarta. How long did you already in Jakarta? How long already? Oh, oh, oh. It is first time for you to come to Jakarta. Okay. So thank you very much because you already talk about Fab City. Otherwise, in Indonesia, we are talking about just starting of smart city. Yeah, Fab City is fabulous. It is a great city, is it? So, but Jakarta also is a Fab City because the large of city is 661 kilometer square kilometer. Comparing Madrid is 600 square kilometers. But population Jakarta is twice than Madrid. Yeah, comparing to Barcelona, is Barcelona 100 kilometer square kilometer, and population is around 2 million. Yeah, but Madrid, you have Real Madrid, you have Marc Marquez. Barcelona, you have Lionel Messi, but it's not Spain. Yeah, it's not Spain, not Spanish. So, what is the problem of Jakarta today? Problem of Jakarta today is first is traffic jam. Traffic jam. You know traffic jam, yeah? Well, Jakarta is, I think, it is number one in the world. The second is garbage. Garbage. The third is the last issue is what is pollution. Pollution. But the most issue of Jakarta today is that government, the President of the Republic, will move Jakarta as a capital city to somewhere very far. This outside of the island. So, yeah. So, how do you think of Jakarta as a very large city? It's comparing Singapore. It is around the same, the large, yeah, but Singapore population is only 3 million maybe. 5 million. 5 million. Yeah, Jakarta in the evening and in the day, working hours is different because people many come from, yeah. It is really not urban. It is the most urban city, metropolitan city. So how do you think about Jakarta to be as a Fab city? Yeah, and any other city that you already visit in Jakarta, in Indonesia, Bandung or Surabaya? Bandung. Oh yeah. But talk about Jakarta first. How to make Jakarta to be as a convenient city, one day to be as a Fab city. Do you think? Yeah. Yeah, thank because you. Here in Jakarta there is no any snow. There is only dust and hot and rain sometimes.
Okay, so I can say a couple of things. One is I live in Barcelona, but I am from Venezuela, right? I think that the problems I live for half of my life in Venezuela.
So you are fans of Real Madrid or Barcelona?
Of course, Barcelona. If it's anyone from Real Madrid in the room, please say it now. But I always been fan of Barcelona before going to Barcelona. But I understand the reality of like different realities of cities, right? Like I know that Europe lives in a little bit of a bubble, right? Like in which things work completely differently or have different problems than cities in the kind of a different development model has, right? In Caracas has the same problems of traffic as Jakarta. But also I can imagine that cities like Sao Paulo, which is more or less the same size, if we want to talk about roughly 20 million people coming from emerging economies, I think they will have like a lot of similarities to Jakarta. That's the first part. The second part is like, we develop projects like the one of the sensors I showed, the Smart Citizen, right? because by the moment in which the smart city, the smart city as a new model for cities was launched, we were very critical. Why? Because it was an imposition of technology first, and then people after, first of all.
Technology first.
Promoted by governments to control and companies to sell. So I'm really skeptical of a smart city. And then also very impositive in a way. This is the smart city model. And everybody comes to you and tries to sell you a model to follow, right? For me, that's a mistake. Because there is no model for all the cities. It will never work. It causes disasters. This is what we have learned. In opposition to that, I think that what we're trying to do with Fab City is to create the conditions for, first of all, learning to happen in the context of the 21st century, and in hand-to-hand to that, experimentation. So I think that, first of all, the learning, and again, like deploying a project like Fab City in a city like Jakarta or Sao Paulo starts with landing into a learning environment, and sometimes these are Fab Labs, but it could be other type of institutions. The learning happens at the local level, but also you learn a lot from the other cities, what they are doing. That's why I was putting the example of Sao Paulo, because what can do Jakarta joining Fab City? They talk to Sao Paulo, is what the first thing that I'm going to tell you. Go and talk to Sao Paulo. We will introduce you to what's Sao Paulo, and also you start to work on projects together. And the second part is that Jakarta needs to define itself, what they want for their own city agenda. It cannot come from models imposed by some other people, experts or whatever. No one is more expert on your city than you, right? What you can get from the Fab City project is things like examples from other cities. We have some guidelines. We offer tools. We want to build a network. And a network is, again, with the same principles of non-hierarchical networks. It's over that model in which someone was telling the other people what to do. What we need to do is to find ways of working together, and I think that's the main principle that Fab City has. So creating experimentation areas, and I think that we can deploy sensors, for instance, to measure the pollution in the city and see what happens when citizens have the sensors and they realize about those values, how they put pressure into the government to take measures. Mobility is related to pollution directly, right? I guess that self-driving cars, mobility as a service, these are things that you have heard about. Where to test them? How we select an area in the city and start to do with that. Waste is the other thing, like it's the easiest probably. Starts to implement little projects in which we can create circular ways of reinserting the waste into production streams, right? So those are examples that can be put easily, but I think first is Jakarta needs to define its own strategy and its own model, but coming from Jakarta. That's I think what I have as the main principle of Fab City.
Yeah. Tomas, yeah, thank you for your presentation. My personal impression is we shouldn't try to take this Fab City concept too literal.
Again, many times what we say is that we're flying an airplane while building it, which means that we are adjusting things, right? And then sometimes the terminology maybe sometimes misleads to certain interpretations. And I agree with you. I think you cannot talk about self-sufficiency because we are they're like an octopus, right? Barcelona is inside two rivers and the sea and the mountain, but it has tentacles that are connected to many supply chains all around the world. So it affects the life of people thousands of kilometers away. And second of all, I think that people claim also that it's not about only the cities area, but what about the rural areas?
Much beautiful future, or I mean, for me, it really solving the problem. But how did you get fund your project? Also, how can you, bridge your service into the real society? And second, last question is how to maintain it. The beautiful building with those future technologies is easy, but maintaining that, the services requires so much money. So thinking about Indonesia and Jakarta, and they have so much.
It will be sustainable to grow the way that we're growing. Because I think that's one of the traps, internet blockchain protocols, trying to think about how we can enable such a complex next phase of the web that will incorporate the physical assets, it incorporates new people creating value that is not only printed by central banks, right? So I think that this is the way to explore. I don't know if that's the response, but I think that we need to be able to live with, find a sustainable models that live with the centrally printed currencies, with some other type of currencies that can be created that people create, right? And that thing, again, I don't know if that's the answer, but it's the same. Like, let's experiment that in the same place that we experiment about the mobility, the air pollution, and the waste. Let's experiment about people transacting with other forms of value, other transactable assets. Let's say, no. So that's I would say one of the responses I'll give to you. And then talking about the buildings and yeah, I think that you mentioned something about the buildings. I think that's irrelevant. Like those experiments are more like these kind of experiments are almost like gimmicks. I would say. I don't know if that makes sense. More like it's a manifesto. No, that idea. I don't think that everybody will be able to print a Fab Lab house in their home. No, and then finally, I have to say to show you this. This is my good friend. You might know him. We're friends with the mayor of Seoul. The mayor of Seoul, they're gonna host the Fab City Summit in 2021, and with the mayor of Seoul, we are trying to look on how it applies into that local context with a very strong local team. And I think that, again, this is not about forget about a smart city, but I think it can complement. I think a smart city is good to set up an infrastructural layer, right? I see it mainly in communications, and now with the 5G, super interesting to think about how this infrastructure that is more central in a way, central by the city government, but these are pieces of infrastructure that maybe they doesn't need to be developed in Fab Labs. But in Fab Labs, we can develop applications for 5G that probably the industry is not imagining. So it's complementary for sure.
Okay, here. So this side.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Okay, thank you. Thomas, great presentation. Nice to know you. Nice to meet you. My name is Riza. I am from Ministry of Home Affairs of the Republic of Indonesia, and I am head of Section 1. That's handle Sumatra region, Java region, and Bali Island. And yeah. It's very interesting talking about the Fab City, and I think the Fab City is beyond smart city. It's a new one, and this is you are inventor, and for the first I will ask you is I know that Barcelona is have a special autonomy in the state of Spain. Okay. Not only in Spain, in Indonesia the system is decentralized. We have Papua special autonomy, we have Yogyakarta special autonomy, we have also Aceh and this capital city Jakarta. My point is it's influencing the support of government to encourage the Fab City. Is the first. What kind of the support of the government? This is I think it's important if we talk in Indonesia. Indonesia is more complexity in political. You know that we have national election, we have local election, and this is I think you can explain what the support and what kind of support. And number two, my question is. The technology is important, but not only technology we can like hardware, software is technology, but we think more than technology is brainware. The people, the human resources. Indonesia is, we realize that the Indonesia is lack of capacity. So my directorate is capacity building, and we responsibility to increase the capacity of local government official. So in your presentation, you explain about Master in City and Technology, maybe, and Fab Academy. You know, can you offer the cooperative program for us? And what kind of cooperative program? We go to Barcelona, or we can, or we yes, or we can take the internet so we can staying connected. Please help us about this big problem in Indonesia. And the last one, Thomas, I'm glad to invite you to talk more large people in Indonesia. In the mid-June, Indonesia within Ministry of Home Affairs held Indonesia International Smart City Expo and Forum. I know Barcelona is the biggest in the world. I know. But if you don't mind, in 2020, in the next June, we can hold the second Indonesia International Smart City Expo and Forum, and I am glad to invite you. That's all. Thank you very much. Good afternoon.
Harusnya ngomong Spanyol tadi Pak.
Dia
belajar bahasa Indonesia.
Gracias. Gracias.
You need to practice Spanish. You will need it. Then there are two things I think that I can mention. There were many. I was looking for references to show you things to respond to what you were raising because it's quite relevant. I think that I'm not. I'm a very bad salesperson because I'm not selling you anything. I'm saying you this is what we do, and we invite you to join us. And we are here because there is a real interest on collaborating with Indonesia. But it's true, like there are two ways of doing this, right? I think that cities have enough capacity and people have enough knowledge to just following, not even following, but just having access to certain information. I know that cities are able to shape their own strategy and to find the best talent to do it, right? So again, we don't want to become a central the node of telling people what to do. We want to provide the resources for people to decide what they want to do. So what we have been doing is this, also in an open source way, this is online, basically. You can now access to that. It's a set of resources that tells you how to join the Fab City, which are the steps, which are the other cities are doing, what is the best strategy that Paris did or Amsterdam did, etc., etc. So in a way, you have the tools to find in your own way what you want to do as Fab City. If we provide extra assistance to cities, yes, we do, of course. I went to Seoul in May to run a workshop with city officials. And after that workshop, actually, the program is now taking into smart factories, which is a linkage that I wanted to do also because the next big project in Seoul is going to be a micro factory, a factory larger than a Fab Lab. Then they're also hosting the Fab City Summit in 2021. So it will be interesting also to have some people from Indonesia joining the Fab City Summit. But also it's true that we welcome people in Barcelona. So like a month ago, we had the people from Suriname. We are receiving people from Nigeria, from the Ministry of Technology of Nigeria, from Argentina and so on. And this is the corporate part. This is the sales part. We offer, as I showed you before, this is our campus in the city, this is our campus in the forest, and we work with over 1,700 Fab Labs in the world, over 1,100. Jogja. I don't think Bali.
Jogja and not Bali. Jogja.
Bali, I don't think so.
Jogja and Bandung, yes. Bali, we have a mini factory.
So these are some of the things that we do. No, we try to work with companies, organizations, and etc. to kind of help them to deal with the complexity that is coming. This is some of the people that we have been working. Again, this is the sales pitch, guys. I'm sorry, it's just a small one. You can see the city of Paris, Renault, the city of Barcelona, etc. And then, well, we work in these topics, right? And you saw that in my presentation, I mentioned some of those, no? Productive cities, the emergent futures, distributed design. So these are areas of knowledge that we have consolidated over the last 10 years in which we believe the world should research about. What we do is three things. We create learning experiences. We do education, research and innovation, and we do products and services. This is what I was saying before. 30% of our budget is education, 60% is research and innovation, and 10% is products and services. This is all the European projects that we have done in the past 5 years. The things that we do, the collaboration models that we do with companies and organizations are two. One, research and innovation, and the other one is learning experiences. The learning experiences meaning that we design a learning environment, like it could be coming to Barcelona or going somewhere else, in which our team work with teams from organizations or cities or whatever to work on a specific topic. And if it's Fab City Indonesia or Fab City Jakarta or Fab City Bali, we then design the topic and we work with you. We don't teach, we work with you. That's important. And then the learning experience is super important in that sense. We have done it with IKEA, for instance. This is a workshop that we did 5 days with the IKEA team in Barcelona, where the IKEA team came to learn about how the distribution of manufacturing will affect their future model. One of the results of that, and probably I can show you this. Let me see. No, I don't have this. Well, whatever. If make it short, what we want to do is this: accelerate the digital transformation in cities. And this is something that definitely we can discuss again with those formats. It's probably that you have a research program or an innovation challenge that you want to organize, and we can work on that. Or you have a team from your area that wants to be involved in this kind of topics, and we for sure can talk to you and basically design it and welcome the team in Barcelona. That's a sales pitch. This was not supposed to be, but thank you for the question.
Hi, Thomas. How are you? Good, thank you. It's very enlightening experience and information you have here. I would like to talk when you talk about education, right? You talk about mostly on third year, high school, not on primary or on the secondary or primary school. So I was thinking this is good experience learning for kids. Have you ever worked with this kind of thing, and have you ever worked with the education systems? Usually in Indonesia, we have education system, we're talking about subject, math, physics, chemistry, biology, where in here, they are more into creation things, right? So how do you embed this into education system? Have you ever tried this into any systems of education? Or can you put this into a formal education that really works to the kids? That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think I can show you quickly, and this is the video of the opening of the Fab Lab. This is a mark.
Toma fuerza en el mundo anglosajón, poco a poco vaya. Aprendan a crear objetos inteligentes usando las últimas tecnologías digitales. Por ejemplo, con este ordenador, un software concreto y una impresora de 3 dimensiones, Silvia ha construido este muñequito.
This is the video of the launching of our Fab Lab. That's the first workshop that we did. The very first workshop, I organized that workshop in which kids have to design a 3D toy, and they also had to laser cut their faces and paint it in the screen and so on. So actually he doesn't work in Fabrication, that's a lie. The component of education that we understand is, I can imagine why you say no, you are working on master education, people that is older, etc. But actually, since we started, we have the focus on K-12 education, for instance, and also of the Fab Lab at school. There are two main projects going on now in the global Fab Lab network. One is called Scopes,
for energy and healthcare,
which is a project that aims to create a curriculum for digital fabrication in the schools. And this is going on. This is actually, you can go now and check for materials that are available. This is developed in partnership with the Fab Foundation in Boston. You can make a lesson plan, for instance, learning from what other teachers are doing. So it's creating a network of teachers and kids in relation to digital fabrication in schools. There is also the work of Stanford that is called Fab Lab at School, which is quite interesting as well. You probably know it, Professor Paulo Blickstein and so on. And then inside our lab, we have I showed before the future learning unit. You see all these. This is our main areas of work. The future learning is actually an area that is focused on how digital fabrication is going to transform education in schools. We are now about to announce in September, hopefully, a big project with Telefónica. Telefónica is the main communication company of Spain, to develop a maker and computational thinking program in all Latin America in partnership with us. So you will see in September news about this. So yes, it's part of our agenda to do something we find fundamental. That is not about creating like a new course of digital fabrication in the school in which kids learn a 3D printing as if they are doing karate. It's not like a complementary activity. It's how you learn everything.
A mí la cubierta de un barco, pero
invertida. How we introduce computers in the class. It's not like a one class of computers. It's how you learn mathematics, history, physics, chemistry, by doing, experimenting in the lab. So that starts from training the teachers. That's something that we do. And then also developing infrastructure inside the schools, like a mini Fab Lab, for them to teach classes connected to their curriculum.
Thank you. Nice presentation, Thomas. Secondly, we are coming from the Indonesian IoT Association. First of all, appreciate for sharing this one. There are a couple questions that we would like to ask you. Number one, since our member is also having its own IoT lab, currently it's more than 3, 4, 5 things, that they are creating ideas, and then from that one, they creating prototyping and also implementing within the user and commercialize. My question is, with your platform of the Fab Labs itself, how you protect the intellectual property rights? Because it's going to be shared, going to be open, going to be that kind of things. Secondly, the question is how you localize the platform itself to be used within this, this community or this region or this nation, because we know the trend now is moving towards edge computing. So cloud is only for analyzing and so on, but all the data that should be gathered within the small community or even small region should be localized in order to enhance connection and so forth. So protect data privacy itself. alrededor
How
del
you
50%
answer
de toda la
this,
estructura que veis en
things?
Alemania.
Thank you.
De Alemania se trajeron todas las piezas en diversos camiones a Barcelona. En Barcelona empezamos una primera fase de preensamblaje, donde montamos la casa, digamos, la reducimos en 15 módulos, que luego se iban a desensamblar en 20 con un total de 20 piezas a transportar en 7 camiones que se cargaron en Barcelona y se trajeron aquí a Madrid. Esto lo hemos logrado gracias al proceso de fabricación.
Talking about waste problems, this is a project started by a Dutch designer called Dave Hackett.
Dentro de las instalaciones del instituto, es decir, todos los detalles hasta el último tornillo ha sido como soluciones pensadas desde dentro, desde lo más cercano a la materia, y esto lo que ha generado al final es una casa que es muy cálida, que llega mucho a la gente. Hemos roto con un esquema que, digamos, viene de años atrás, que es el de la industrialización. Hemos cambiado ese sistema y lo hemos hecho, digamos, acercando mucho la parte de diseño y la parte de prototipaje.
Waste. So we made an entire plastic recycling workspace inside an old shipping container. It contains all the tools and machines to turn plastic waste into valuable things. Plastic is collected, shredded and turned into something new, all inside the space. This workspace can turn plastic trash into, let's say, beautiful bowls in any color, or strong wall grips. And with precise molds, it can make precise objects, or simply make any wall more beautiful. Make beams and construct a big tower, or start small with a jewelry collection. This workspace can be set up all over the world, from cities to tropical beaches to the middle of a landfill. Plastic trash goes in, valuable items out. We share step-by-step instruction videos and all the technical drawings to build this workspace yourself. Open source, online, for free. Plus tutorials on how to make objects, a big community of helpers, plus an online marketplace to buy and sell products. So people from all over the world, like you, can set up a little recycle business, turning plastic waste into valuable things. Now you can set up a workspace like this yourself, anywhere in the world, and start recycling plastic. However, we're also aware it can be a bit overwhelming to set up something like this yourself. So we created a map where people can collaborate and find each other. Let others know you're ready to take action, whether it's promoting, funding, collecting, building, helping, selling. At all fronts, help is needed. Add yourself to a map, find each other and start. Oh, and make sure to spread this message around. It might not be you that wants to get started, but it could be your friend, family, neighbor. So let's make sure they know they can. Visit preciousplastic.com for all the information.
The logics, I think like the logics of the digital, no? Like I think like that's the tension that you see still between the old and the new, which is where is the money? No? Like we were the other day in Kuala Lumpur, and there was a Chinese person in the room. It's like, where is the money? Like, so I said like a value. I think like we are not talking about money. We're talking about value, and money follows value. I mean, I learned about that. My own experience in my lab has been I did the things that I thought they had value, and then the money came. I was not looking for money. Money came afterwards. So there is an economy around open source that is very, very, very strong. In our case, the Smart Citizen project, I can show you another example, is all the files and all the plans are actually as well available online. And this is a project that has fundraised over 1 million euros in the last couple years, right? And the money came from grants, didn't come from selling the product. And the money is coming from different sources that we did not expect it. That's the thing. But it's a valuable project that is followed by the money. And then finally, I think this is another example. Probably you know it. You know Arduino? Yes. So Arduino is an open source platform for electronics. They have a business size of, I think they're over 1.5 million per year. and they are open source as well. So I think that the logics of the projects, especially the IoT, I think the IoT sector is very interesting because it has both the physical and the digital component. And in the digital operates in a very decentralized, collaborative, framework. And then in the other hand, the physical part is probably more controlled. There is this fear of losing the IP. But companies like Microsoft, companies like Intel are moving to open source because what you want is to have people joining you and not just this protective idea of products. I think is part of that industrial paradigm. And then these are examples in which that open source can generate value, which generates money afterwards. There was another question, right? There was another one.
Yes, I'm not arguing of the open source. Open source is fine. I'm just arguing how to protect the intellectual property.
Yeah,
that's coming out of the open source solution and so on.
Yeah, I think like in software, no, people use GitHub and you can fork and then you can say you make something that is derivative. It's very easy. In products, it's more difficult. That's what we're doing with the example I showed with Wikifactory plus the combination with blockchain. For instance, the uncorruptible, secure, use of platform that blockchains offer for designs could be really interesting. It means like I can have my own design in my repository, and that's every modification, every addition is stored in the blockchain. It cannot be corrupted by anyone. Then if you make money about that, I can put a smart contract inside the design that says that you have to give me 10% and also accredit myself as one of the authors. Also, I think like another example, you were talking about privacy. And then with the Smart Citizen project, we're doing there is an issue about generate data, right? How we protect the ownership of that data and how we don't allow third parties to use that data and benefit from it as Google, Facebook, they do with your personal data. So there's a European project as well called Decode, in which we are storing the data captured by the Smart Citizen project, the Smart Citizen kits that people put in their balcony into the blockchain, and then they can issue smart contracts and decide how that data is used by third parties, for instance. So
to be comply with GDPR on the EU.
Yeah,
right?
Definitely. It's an EU-funded project, so we need.
What Thomas mentioned before was very interesting, because he said that actually to start the Fab City has to be start from the habit, small habit, behavior. So yeah, if you come to Telkom Smart Office or Telkom Landmark Tower, you cannot get any plastic today because it is not allowed in that office. So here you see a lot of plastic. So I think this can, I think we have to start to campaign. I think, yeah, I think you are right that learning means habit.
That the world is also the idea of plastic is not harmful, but actually you start to eat fish with plastic. The microplastic in the fish, ikan with plastic. Yeah. You can eat plastic. Nasi goreng with ikan and plastic. That will make us stronger.
Yeah, I visit Barcelona many times for GSM Congress every year. It has been. It will be on February, next. It will be conducted. Yeah, next February. Next February. Oh yeah. Oh, you have both also there. Oh, Barcelona. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, good.
Near La Alhambra.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Okay, right. Yeah. Because here actually the National ICT Council, led by Pak Ilham, we are coordinate all of the smart city campaign in Indonesia and also starting with also the IoT city. Yeah, IoT city. But that is the problem is that different area, different case, different culture, different behavior, and also I don't know whether the Fab City approach is come from bottom up or top down.
Usually what happens is that the local Fab Lab community or the local ecosystem lobbies into the government, and then the government responds. So what we're doing is providing a tool for this local ecosystem to have the support from the local authorities, local governments to put in motion things. But then at the end, I think for us it's interesting to have a mix of both approaches. It should be both, definitely.
Like the mayor of Barcelona proclaiming in 2014 in 40 years need to be self-sustainable, I think it's very important. Yes. You need support. Maybe before that happens, you need enough movement, enough activity on the grassroots, and then at some point in time you have to convince up there, and then you make it happen. In both, right? I think it starts with grassroots. Grassroots first, you create strong movement, and then the politician will understand this is important. These are voters in the end, right? And then they will make a decision. I think it's the only way to go. Yeah. Maybe we get some questions from the right hand side. Dari tadi, boleh dalam bahasa Indonesia nggak apa-apa. Ini ada penerjemah dengan sengaja. Silakan. Boleh dalam bahasa Indonesia kok.
Hello, Thomas. I just want a question about the possible. Oh.
Kasihan penerjemah.
Okay. Just want to ask about how you govern the platform to prevent someone build something bad like a gun. So, is it possible? You know, in the US it is illegal or something like that, but in Indonesia obviously that is illegal. So, thank you.
Did you see you maybe saw this defense distributed? Yeah, it was scary. It was in a lot of exhibitions. Yeah, I was talking about distributed design, distributed models. So this is defense distributed. It says join the fight. You see the difference of language, you know? Join the Fab City, join the fight. So as you can see, these people they have been working on developing wiki weapon, for instance, right? And it enters into this void, no? It's kind of a gray area in which the regulation versus access to production and so on that makes it very difficult, right? But as we know, also like you can make pretty useful guns. I can use a chair, or I can put some poison in the coffee here that I made in my house. So there's always that risk, but also it's true that there is a level of, I don't know, what holds us from not killing each other is very little, right? This, of course, adds to that complexity. But to be honest, I don't know. I don't know how to avoid it. Besides the self-regulated society, what stops us from killing each other? I think that's a question. The same technology used to make bicycles is used to make guns. The same technologies that are going to be used to change the world, they're going to create risks for the change of the world. And this is nothing. When biotechnologies become accessible, and you can start to program viruses, you can start to program life, and that's, I think, we need to work instead of like a regulatory prohibitive kind of framework. I think that we need to work on this kind of mechanisms for society to do self-regulation and to have clear what we want to do, Because if you want to conquer the other, if we praise differences between races and between nationalities, of course people will find always the way to find the best tool to eliminate the other. And then that tool will be, again, as I said, it will be anything. It will be 3D printed or not 3D printed. It will be a virus or it will be whatever. But I think that is what is the main reason is not the technology. It's going to be, the intentions around it and to establish the real purpose of what people have to do here.
Maybe a little bit suggestion for you, for Fab, to make a collaboration with the authority to make some prohibition in some certain area like Indonesia. That's maybe great.
Fab Labs, they share an inventory, but they also share a charter. And this charter is like when a Fab Lab joins the network, they need to accept kind of these principles of the network. And in these principles of the network, it says like, we don't do anything to harm people. So Fab Labs is a community, it's machines, it's spaces, but it's values. And inside those values is not to harm the planet or other people.
I think just to another different response to what you asked. It's a very good question because it's something we have to deal with.
Yes.
But technology or any product has no property, and no character. It's the people that make it bad. You can use a gun in order to kill somebody or to kill somebody who attacks you, and you protect yourself. Right? But it's true that proliferation of guns is bad, actually, in the end. Yeah. That's true as well. But in the end, I think if you, on the other side, create more collaboration between people through, for instance, Fab Lab or others, and you work together, you design together, you share knowledge, it makes the gap between people small. And that will, in the end, also lead to decreasing aggression and decreasing crime, because the inequality, which is sometimes the reason for the conflict, is getting less. But it's difficult to prevent that totally, right? You will always have things misuse. But I think the use in that regard is bigger than the misuse. So I think anything that can lessen the discrepancy, the difference between people is good to basically lessen the crime. By itself, it's very difficult to prevent the proliferation of guns, because you can probably print a gun already. You don't need the Fab Lab ones, right? Yeah, you can. You see everything, atomic bomb, I don't know.
Thank you. Tomas, I had a question for you. You have a lot of experience. You've traveled all over the world. You've been involved in this for many years. And of late, I heard that you've also been coming to Indonesia a few times. I think you have interacted with some people here who are in this space, makerspace, etc. What are your initial reactions? Because you've seen what happens in developed parts of the world, and you've seen Indonesia. Probably you have to judge where is Indonesia in that whole chain cycle. So what are your initial reactions, and if you have any advice of what do you think should be the approach that Indonesia as a country could do in order to be more mainstream with this, with the make?
Yeah, that's actually you remind me of something that I thought that I should say for sure, which is that I think in the same way that I was mentioning before, that we don't want to be in the same mistakes of the smart city, or the West has the answer to save the world. I think that the first thing to do is to recognize the local values, and the local strengths. I have been coming to Indonesia for the last 7 years, and then everywhere I go, I have this obsession. We should have a Fab Lab, And then I started to come to Bali, and they say, "Oh, it will be amazing to have a Fab Lab here." It was like a very egoistic way, because I was trying to create an excuse to come to Indonesia, to come to Bali, to work in a Fab Lab and to help to create a community and so on. The thing is, in many ways, I understood that, at least in Bali, the local crafts, the capacity of making, would make a Fab Lab redundant if it would be only about making things. So I started to understand that the Fab Labs should not be about making objects or 3D printing things, but actually would be a way to bring a new extra layer of knowledge to an existing knowledge, right? And in this way, I know that it's not only in Bali, but in many parts of Indonesia, the crafts is very strong, and we need to take care of that. We want to we want to take care of that and be able to make the technology to contribute to that. I am from, as I said, I am from Venezuela, and I've been participating in projects in slums in Venezuela, in which people, they have the capacity of self-build their own houses. And we have made projects in which we take that, that informal knowledge of low-tech making and try to combine it with the high-tech, more formalized knowledge of making. So I think like a project that lands in Indonesia, like a Fab Lab, which is about making, should first of all honor and recognize the crafts and start from there, I would say, and not trying to digitize everything, but actually create these mechanisms of interactions. And as I said, it's creating spaces for interaction, for experimentation, that where you're going to develop your own model. And it's not going to say like, no, you should put this and put a robotic arm instead of the guy carving the stone. It's like, no, actually they are better than the robot arm, right? So we need to really think about those considerations. And in the case of Indonesia, and specifically in Bali, I had that reaction, like, why a Fab Lab? Right? And then start to think about, like, it's not about the machines and technology, it's about the culture, collaboration, and also the connection with the global network.
Ada lagi, Pak? Dari tadi nggak ada satu pun yang bertanya dalam bahasa Indonesia. Ayo.
Wah, Her, pakai bahasa Jawa aja bisa nggak?
I will ask you in bahasa.
Okay. You have to use it as
Yes.
Ada lagi. Pakai bahasa Jawa aja kan?
Ya. Ya, Mbak ya. Oke. Indonesia mempunyai banyak pulau. Nah, kami ingin I will ask. Indonesia mempunyai banyak pulau. Kami ingin mencoba mentransformasi kota-kota yang di pulau itu ke dalam Fab Lab. Antara satu pulau dengan pulau lain ada perbedaan, banyak sekali perbedaannya. Oleh karena itu, prerequisite apa yang harus disiapkan supaya bisa masuk ke Fab City tadi? Apakah infrastruktur broadband misalnya, ataukah world class university atau apapun. Nah, itu yang kami ingin dapatkan supaya kita bisa mendorong setiap kota-kota itu bisa menjadi Fab City. Terima kasih.
So, sure, please.
You are saying that what happens in doesn't have a Fab Lab or the prerequisites for the country to go to facility.
Almost. It's not bad, but you catch like several key points. But like I will try to translate that. So what Mr. Gary is asking was, Indonesia has so many islands, like so many like small islands, like 17,000 islands, and then like, we want to try to transform those cities within the islands. So how can we? What prerequisite that required us to adapt the Fab cities, and what kind of requirements that we need to adopt the Fab cities, and like how we encourage the adoption itself. Like, thank you.
Indonesia, the islands of Indonesia, you operate like this today. Or like that. Or like this.
Decentralized.
You have decentralized. So you have the regions and the autonomies that you were mentioning, right? They take care of
That was before. We used to be like that before 1998.
You were like this?
Before 2000. Before 2000, we were like this.
You moved
Then
like this.
changed it. Then we are confused now with villages.
Because sometimes this one is still having
Yeah,
power.
there's some leftover, but we really want to be that.
So
But in the future, we might do that. But that's
exactly. So that what's the thing like what these main nodes provide to the island? What they provide to the island? Security.
Facilities.
Facilities.
But Gary said, not every node can have they have the same capacity. Ability. Some of them don't have a school. On the good, not good ones.
Okay.
So yeah.
So people that is in this tiny island,
They go to
this main island
For instance.
for going to university.
For instance, yes.
Okay. And if I go to hospital, maybe it's
Same
something
thing.
serious.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
maybe
Exactly.
it's something too serious, they have to go to the
Exactly. So the Jakarta has done a major function of something only to be found in Jakarta, but in the provinces we have 34. We have capital cities of the province have a lot of power today. They have some facilities not to be found in the other cities, but more in the city. So it's more decentralized, but it's certainly not that yet.
Okay. What about energy?
Energy is centralized.
Centralized.
Centralized. And it's with
No, I mean
thermoplan.
We have all kinds of plants. We have even the coal fire plant.
Oil,
gas, and we have all renewable.
Okay.
But the production is decentralized. You find it everywhere all over Indonesia.
Yeah.
But the distribution is centralized. One company stock.
What about like cars, transportation, boats, products, like goods?
Okay.
Centralized and then distributed to the islands and then distributed to the.
The factories are not all over. But mostly, I think it's fair to say that in Jakarta and West Java, maybe a third of the industry is but the rest. This is where we are, the main part of the industry.
So this is probably jumping into the future a bit, but finding that yes, I think that it makes sense to have certain centralized roles, like on regional scale. Say Barcelona, Catalonia. Also Barcelona as a main city, but have a smaller city. They're more connected, but it's kind of a similar idea. What is interesting to see is like how you start to produce locally. If you have something, something breaks, go to Jakarta or for a new thing, probably it fix on site. If you need to satisfy the food necessity for these islands, you can